Guys, yet again, I've created another video and didn't check that my microphone was working on OBS. So I spent 30 minutes chatting and nothing has come of it. So let me start again. As you can see behind, I have made a table for engineering commanders that will enable you to pick engineering auxiliary skills for the upcoming Siege of Orleans KVK and other auxiliary skill KVKs. Now, I've had so many questions about this in the past, and other people in my kingdom have questioned, you know, oh, is this available? Can you use this on a siege march? Can you use that on a siege march? And I thought it was about time that I created this table so that everyone is aware what does and doesn't work in a ranged march. Now, if I go in game quickly, we can see that engineering marches, they launch ranged basic attacks, and they do ranged normal damage, they do ranged skill damage or ranged smite damage. Now, these aren't boosted by a lot of the skills that normal commanders do. Some commanders boost normal damage like Joan, some commanders boost skill damage like Mehmed. So his second skill damage bonus won't work. Skill damage does not boost ranged direct damage, ranged additional damage or ranged skill damage, because it's a completely different thing. Ranged skill damage is not skill damage. That's why other commanders on the field that reduce skill damage taken are not affected by ranged skill damage either. Like, ranged players will still do just as much damage to those people with skill damage reductions or smite damage reductions or combo attack reductions. It doesn't matter. Ranged normal damage is not normal damage. It's nothing like it. It's like completely different. Just imagine them calling this something completely new, like curtain damage. You know, it could be a new thing from Lilith, but this damage, it's just not the same. In fact, using normal damage, it might just as well not been used, to be honest with you. So this brings me on to the table. Now, I did speak about this more before, but yeah, people were questioning a lot of things about which commanders would work. Yeah, people thought this normal damage on Joan would be OP for obviously a Gauge, a Cordoba march, and it would have been, but unfortunately it can't be used. Now, there's some commanders that I might have to look at rejigging, because I think this full skill on Mulan would be really nice for an auxiliary skill. 20% attack, and also whenever the troop uses an active skill, increases the target's damage received by 20% for 3 seconds with a cooldown of 5 seconds. So every 10 seconds you're going to get this popping off. Damage taken increased. I think that's a really strong skill. Now, a few of the things I need to mention, well, in fact, one of the things I need to mention is that we've seen that ranged troops do ranged basic attacks. Now, some of these troops, some of these other commanders, whenever their troop launches a basic attack, it has a 10% chance to do something. Those will not work because, again, ranged marches don't launch basic attacks. They launch just ranged basic attacks. So it doesn't matter. Any other troop that has a skill saying whenever their troop launches a basic attack, it will not operate, will not work on a ranged march. So this brings me back to the table. So here we have the engineering auxiliary skills for open field. This is open field anyway, only. Now, you can have different ones for garrisons and rallies if you really want to launch siege rallies, or even if you want to swarm flags as a siege player, you know, you could pick different skills. But this is primarily looking towards firing at range on the open field, which is generally why people have ranged towers. Now we have gold tier, silver tier and bronze tier. So I've actually labelled these with colour on which I think are the better skills that you could pick from on this table. Now, skill 2 and 3, there's not many options through the table, which I'll just show you here. There's a lot of crosses, and many of the ones that you would have maxed as a free-to-play or low spender, you know, you're not going to have those as options. So we do find a lot of the leadership commanders have decent second skill options. Honda, Heraclius, Suleiman, believe it or not, Matthias. Again, I don't know exactly what commanders are available in Siege of Orleans. I mean, it's my first time going into it, and it's going to be a really interesting KVK and a bit of an eye-opener. So if there's anything that needs updating after I'm into KVK, which is in matchmaking stage now, you know, we have found out who we're going to be against, or, you know, we know who's in the map with us. We don't know who the allies and that will be, and that'll be probably on the next video who we decide to ally with. I think it's a bit of a fuss going on in Diplo at the moment, so we'll see about that. So let's start off at the top here. Now, in the video I previously made, which took me 30 minutes, I went down all the second skills, all the third skills, then all the fourth skills. Do I do that differently? No, I say we just go down in a hole now and just go each individual commander. So Mehmed is an option if you've maxed him. You've got 2 silver tier skills there. 20% attack, and it's only silver tier because there is better options in skills 2s. Like you saw from Suleiman, like you saw from Heraclius, and we'll go and look at that in a second. But they are good options if you max the commander. Caesar, 10% damage reduction, it's not bad, but the 15% unit capacity is actually really good. That's the highest unit capacity you can get, I believe, from any commander in Rise of Kingdoms from their skills. So definitely worth thinking about, because obviously that will increase your damage dealt, among with other things like mighty healing, obviously scales up with unit capacity. Matilda, I think you're probably going to take the 30% health, 30% defense, because there's not many options in skill 3 rather than the unit capacity from Matilda. But don't worry about it being a gathering commander. You know, that's what farms are for. Plus, other gathering commanders don't have many options, so you're probably only going to use Matilda for using one of these skills. Now, Richard does a 15% damage reduction and adds a 10% counter-attack damage bonus. Now, your counter-attack damage bonus will only take effect when you're in melee range anyway, but the 15% damage reduction actually is quite good. And if people do come to swarm you, that 10% counter-attack damage bonus will add up. You know, maybe for your guards, your Marder, Cordoba March, that would be quite nice. It's tempting to put that into gold tier, to be honest with you. 30% healing bonus. Again, that could be okay on your guards, your Marder March, increasing that healing. Or, you know, if you picked another healing skill from maybe your skill 3 and another healing bonus in skill 2, then increasing that in skill 4 by 30% actually could be really good. I just saw about this actually. Because if we look at the bottom of the list, I'm not going to go down yet, but Shajar does a great amount of healing. And if you increase that by 30% on 3 troops, that could actually be quite OP. I don't know. Just a thought, guys. So then we have Alex. Now, Alex, he does 40% attack, I believe, if your march doesn't have a shield. And the chances are you're not going to have a shield unless you use Heraclius' 3rd skill. But I don't know if he's available to use for auxiliary skills yet again. So that we'll have to look at. But if you do have a shield, you get 30% defense, so it's not the end of the world, guys. You get decent amount of stats from this one. Probably something I would use. 40% attack all the time is a big deal. That is going to cause a lot more damage. Again, we have another counter-attack one. That is only going to affect probably if you're getting swarmed or someone comes and attacks you one-on-one or you're in melee range when you're actually getting hit with basic attacks. Ishida, 15% health. It's okay. Probably not good enough where you're actually going to take him out from being a gathering commander. There's so many options in this 4th skill tier. Sun Tzu, you could use for a 10% damage reduction. It's not bad at all. Boudica, I do like this one. You get rage gain and a 400 healing factor. So that is, yeah, that's really nice. Rage gain on your engineering marches is just really good. Belisarius, we've seen this skill before from Heroic Anthem. 25% bonus damage to troops with less than 50% units remaining. And yeah, I think that's a really solid one. If you put that on John and you're doing 65% bonus damage when you're attacking weaker troops, that could be really good. I mean, to even just chuck it on your guards, your Cordoba. I'd want to chuck so many of these on guards, your Cordoba. I think it would be so strong. Or if you're Margaret Cordoba, if you're using that. And I'll explain about that one in a second, because you can have a really good skill for Margaret Cordoba, and that's actually going to come from Lohar. Mulan, we spoke about this one. I think that's such a solid skill for running multiple marches, attacking the same march. Really strong, and I think I'm going to have to go for that one. Even if you're just using that on one of your debuffing marches, maybe your Archimedes and Afanso, and you could add some debuff skills to that march. Bybars, 50% march speed, 200 healing. 50% march speed only lasts for like 10 seconds when exiting combat, I believe. I do like Lohars though. 200 healing when exiting combat. You actually exit combat quite a lot of times when you're a ranged player. Every time you defeat a troop, you exit combat unless you quickly target another troop before finishing that one off. And then you can keep your rage going, which, like, keeping your rage going is great. But if you don't keep it going, then 2000 healing when you're exiting combat is actually really, really strong. And I think I'd use that on my Margaret Cordoba march. Although Margaret Cordoba does stay in contact with a lot of troops more often because of the active skill from Cordoba, which hits 3 targets. So there's more chance of obviously staying in contact with the troops and not exiting combat. But Margaret Cordoba does die probably a bit faster than some of the other marches. Maybe your Afanso Archimedes march, which doesn't have a load of healing either. It's definitely an option on something. I think that's really strong skill. 15% unit capacity again from Frederick. Again, pretty good. Now we've got a lot of 10% unit capacities, and there's probably more of these, of more of the commanders. But I kind of got fed up at this point of putting 10% unit capacities. The only thing that's worth mentioning is these 2 are other gathering commanders. So if you were going to use a 10% unit capacity, just take it off Scipio. Thutmose, 15% damage bonus, so that's huge. I will be using that, and I have unlocked that at 5, so great. Osman, I actually had to change because I thought it was 400 damage factor. But he actually does 400 additional damage factor every time your troop uses an active skill, which is crazy, crazy good. And if you can get those active skills popping off more often on a higher rage march, maybe like Joan, Baba, or if you've got a crit horn and a couple of drums, then this is going to be popping off a lot more often. And also this could actually come into effect more often with some of the lower rage requirement active skill reduction skills, which I'll show you in a second. Alcid, probably not going to be that beneficial because you have to have less than 50% units remaining to gain the 25% damage and 25% march speed, but still nothing to be sniggered at. It's not a bad skill at all. Diao Chan, 10% defense, 10% attack. She also does a 500 healing factor on that full skill. They're okay, and if you've got nothing else, great options. 20% attack from Lapu Lapu. Theodora, 10% attack, 10% damage. That's actually a really good skill, but how many players have Theodora's 3rd skill maxed? I'm not sure that many. Trajan, though, 40% stats. Again, defense and health, 40% of those stats. That's huge. Really nice. YSS, also on his 3rd skill, 30% defense, 30% damage if you've got less than 50% remaining as well. Even the 30% defense is pretty nice. So if you do let your troop go down to less than 50%, though, 30% damage is just a good bonus. And if you're getting swarmed, that is going to help quite substantially, I'd have thought. Eleanor, not maxed, but 10% damage bonus there. Now this is where it gets interesting. So Genghis Khan, actually on his 2nd skill, allows you to have 100% rage reduction for using active skills. And I don't believe there's any cooldown on that. That literally lasts forever. As long as you're doing active skills, there'll be 100 rage reduction. Now, if you pair this with Osman's 400 damage factor every active skill, you're going to be doing that even more often. So you're going to be doing your active skills more often, and also your additional damage factor from Osman's 3rd skill. So some of these skills will bounce off each other and do a lot better. So although put it in bronze tier, I think that has some great... You have some great options with that. Ragnar, 20% attack bonus. Come here. Come on. Okay. Right. You need to be quiet, okay? You got a sticker. Good girl. Right. Boudica Prime, 400 healing factor. Oh, nice. I'm still recording, like live now. Not live, but well done, baby. I messed up the first time. I had no sound on. It was a me problem. I'm trying to hurry it up because I want to get done. Boudica Prime, 400 healing factor. William, 10% damage outside of territory. It's not bad, but you do have to be outside of territory. Zhang Yu, again, 50 less rage requirement for active skill, but it is less than Genghis Khan, so you're probably not going to use that. Honda is actually really good. 50% attack, 20% march speed, and you only get the full 50%. You only get the full 50% attack if you're attacking another troop, which, to be honest, you should be. Now, Honda's 3rd skill is also really good. 5% damage reduction, 400 damage factor, and 50% march speed reduction to your target. Heraclius does 30% health bonus, also that 400 mighty shield, which I don't think is amazing, not for range march. Herman Prime, 20% defense reduction for 2 seconds on the target, which could be good if you want to be, debuffing targets, but it's only for 2 seconds. Wu Zetian, a small 20% worth of stats. Artemisia's could be really interesting, so 50% damage increase for 5 seconds, but there's only a 50% chance of that, and the other 50% chance actually silences yourself. So it's an option. Nebu, 15% damage bonus, which is really good, but it depends if you've got him maxed or not. You're probably not using him on the field anymore, so that's a definite option for a ranged player. Moctezuma, again, who's probably got this maxed, I don't know. 10% march speed, 20% attack. Well, we know Apocalypse Gaming has actually got this max, so he could be using that if he uses Siege March. Pakal, 10% damage reduction. Suleiman's actually really good. His second skill, not he's really good, not like you'd really invest in, but it's potential that I would put some gold heads to unlock this second skill, because you get 30% stats, a 10% damage reduction. It's actually a decent amount of stuff there. Flavius does 10% damage bonus. Casimir, I don't think it'll be available yet, but it does 15% unit capacity on that third skill. So you can actually get 2 lots of 50% unit capacity from your third and fourth skill. Hannibal, now not many people would have him max, and I don't recommend it, but 10% unit capacity and 3 seconds of 15% damage bonus. Tariq, again, another nice 50% damage bonus, which would be very, very useful. Huo, 150 rage requirement reduction, but that's only lasts for 15 seconds when you enter battle. But, you know, we saw the one from Genghis Khan, and that just 100 rage reduction consistently is really good. 1500 healing factor after defeating a troop, though. I really like that. That could be really strong. Then we're on to Matthias. Again, I don't think it'll be added, but 30% stats there and another 10%, so 40% stats total. Lubu, only 15% attack bonus. You're probably still not be using Lubu, and I don't have this option anyway. But Shajar, really, really good. Mighty heals 3 troops, so all 3 of my troops, my ranged troops, are going to get 500 healing factor if I use this, if she's available to use in Siege of Orleans. Or you could use a 4th skill, which takes 20% less damage, and it does some healing thing, which is too complicated for me to explain. I think you have to have a lower amount of troops, and then when you get to that point, you heal quite a lot of troops. But if you're getting swarmed, I don't think you want this. You're probably just going to cause more troops in your hospital, to be honest with you. Now, a few things I did miss off the list is other engineering commanders. Now, I don't know what's available in the game from these engineering commanders. Now, some of them are quite old now. You know, your Margaret, Baba, Cordoba, Garja, even John and Stephen to a certain extent. But these newer commanders, maybe the epics actually. Epics came out just before John and Stephen. These could be available to take the skills from. And every single skill on these engineering marches will work. I mean, of course they're going to work on a ranged march, so that's not a problem. I guess, to an extent, picking out some of these skills that might be good. I mean, just like this one here on Catherine's. Every time you launch basic attack, 30% chance to deal ranged additional damage to the target every second for the next 2 seconds. So that's, yeah, 400 times 2, which is actually massive as well. That's similar to Osman's. But it's every time you launch basic attack, 30%. That could be a lot of damage actually adding up. There is a 10-second cooldown though. Also, 3 nearby allied troops can get these bonuses. Cooldown 5 seconds as well. Again, a pretty decent skill. Narcissus, what's he got in his kit? 60 rage, some healing. That's pretty similar to Boudica's skill, which is nice, as we know. I don't think that's crazy. That only adds up to 20% attack. Now, Archimedes and Mary, I know they have some good skills between them. You can get some ranged skill damage, and you can have a 30% chance to extend that by a second. Although there is a cooldown again, which is annoying. 10% defense here. Whenever the commander's troop using active skill while in range mode, increase the target range skill damage received by 10% for 3 seconds. So this could be good, because there's a lot of ranged skill damage commanders now, and increasing their ranged skill damage taken would be pretty decent. Now, the only thing is, you're not helping other field troops with this ranged skill damage received, because field troops deal skill damage, smite damage, combo damage, and if they're being hit by skill damage, that won't obviously help out. Now, Archimedes' 4th skill is also very, very strong. The target takes 50% more ranged basic attack damage, and if you did use this, obviously a march speed reduction as well, I think that could be very strong for multiple siege marches. The question is, how many siege marches do you decide to run? And if you ran 3 siege marches and you're just using these commanders, you've got some great options from other commanders if you've decided to max them. But not many people have maxed all these commanders. So, you know, second skill, 30% stats. It's not actually crazy. Afanso though, 25% health, 10% attack, 20% march speed. They're decent stats. Damage reduction, that stack's quite nice as well. But I just don't think you're going to have expertised Afanso and not be using them on the field really. But in the future, potentially, this would actually be good at the full skill. So I've not added these to the list just yet, but potentially coming into Siege of Orleans KVK, if I see these can be used, some of these commanders, then I will add them to the list and rate how good they are. I do like this third skill. I think that could be very good. A shame there's a cooldown though. Obviously there's no cooldown on Osman's skill, so I think Osman could still be better, you know, because of that 10-second cooldown, which is disappointing. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found that helpful. And anyone going to Siege of Orleans with a ranged march, use a table. I will add it to the Discord group, probably in its own separate section. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Throw a like on this video, much appreciated, guys. It helps everyone see the video more, and it also helps the channel. Thanks a lot, guys. This was Mr. Siege, and bye-bye.